I'm Aaron. I'm an instructional assistant here at the Makerspace, and I'm here to talk to you about our Universal Laser Systems laser cutting table. This does engraving and cutting of materials like woods and plastics. There are quite a few materials that are not allowed on this machine due to safety concerns. In particular, any kind of plastic other than acrylic is highly dangerous to cut on this machine because we do not have external ventilation. We do have a ventilation system which will take out most dangerous chemicals, but it will not take out certain chemicals, so we only allow the use of acrylic and wood in this machine at the moment. For this machine, you will need vector art if you are intending to cut anything out. If you just want to raster an image, just put an image down on a piece of material. You can do that with any image, doesn't even need to be black and white. Any image can be converted to grayscale automatically by the machine. If you do want to cut something out, you're going to need to have vector lines, and you can accomplish that in Illustrator, any vector art software, but you will need to use CorelDRAW here on this computer prior to using the machine in order to get it to cut properly. So for this machine, you're going to need to be operating in CorelDRAW. This is the only machine in the Makerspace at the moment that can operate this laser directly. We are planning to have CorelDRAW on other machines in the future, but at the moment this is the only one with CorelDRAW. So in order to get started, you're going to click this little green circle at the bottom. It's going to start up CorelDRAW. And once this is open, we're going to start a new document. It will by default have the right dimensions for this machine. We're going to click this little plus button up here. And this is going to open up a workspace for us that is 32 inches by 18 inches, and that is the whole workspace of the laser table itself. You don't need to worry about where you're placing it on here. This is just for reference. This will just give you an idea of how much space on the laser it's going to take up. So for this, I'm just going to take a random image that I find on the internet, and I'm going to set it up so that it can be vector art, and then I'm going to set it up so it can be cut on this machine using that vector art. So let's just open up Google Chrome. I don't know, let's look for a banana. So let's just grab a relatively simple image. You don't want anything with a lot of background because that'll take a lot of effort to clean up. So let's get a pretty simple one. This looks pretty good. I'm just going to right click and copy this image, and then click down here to open Corel again, or Alt Tab, and I'm going to paste it in, Control V. And now this is a rasterized image. You can see it has pixels on it. We are going to convert that into a line drawing so that it can be read by this machine as a cut. So in order to do that, we're going to right click on the image. We're going to go to Outline Trace. We're going to select Line Art. Any of these options is okay. Line art will get us closer to where we want to go at the end. These all use the same utility. This just has the appropriate settings for what we're looking for to start with. And as you can see, this isn't quite what we want yet. So what I'm going to do is go over to the colors setting. I'm going to change this to grayscale. And that's going to change it from having yellows to just having grays. And I'm going to go back over to settings. I'm going to delete the original image. That one's already checked. I'm going to click Remove Color from Entire Image. That's going to take that off. And then I'm going to change this from wireframe overlay to before and after, just to give us a better idea of what we're looking at. In this case, I'm going to have it automatically choose color. And then right now, I don't really care what this looks like in terms of the specific detail, but if you wanted to say have more detail from the original present on here, you can increase the detail by dragging this to the right, decrease it by dragging it to the left. Just play around with these sliders until you get a resulting image that's pretty close to what you want. We can still make modifications afterwards, but we want to get it relatively close so there's less work to do in the future. Once we're done, we're going to hit OK. It's going to delete the original image and replace it with the one that we're using. You can see here now, no matter how far we zoom in, there are no pixels. That's because this is now a piece of line art. I'm going to right click. I'm going to ungroup all objects because I want to delete a couple of these pieces down here on the bottom. And that's going to separate all these out, as you can see, into these little pieces. I'm going to hit Control Z so I can move that back to where it was. And then I'm going to grab a couple of pieces off of the bottom here and just sort of drag them away so that we don't have that shadow from below. I'm not going to worry about this little piece. I'm just going to select all of these and hit Delete in order to remove them. Now we have our banana that we're going to be putting on a piece of wood. Right now, it's kind of an arbitrary size. We're going to go ahead and resize it. And we're going to work on this piece of wood here, which is, about 5 or 6 inches on each side. So I'm going to cut this banana down to the longest dimension. I'm going to make it maybe 3 inches just to make sure that we have plenty of room. Now I'm going to make sure that this little lock next to the dimensions here, width and height, I'm going to make sure this lock is clicked quite the right size for what we want. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to right click on the image, and I'm going to group the objects again so that I don't accidentally take a part of it instead of the whole thing. Now I'm going to move this over so I can see a little bit better where I'm working. I'm going to click on here. Here are dimensions and our coordinates. So our coordinates aren't really important because we're going to have to move it around in the laser after we've actually sent it to the printer. In this case, I'm working with a piece of wood that's 5 or 6 inches on each side, so I'm going to make sure this banana will fit in there. I'm going to make it about 3 inches on the longest dimension. So our dimensions are right here. The first one is width and the second one is height. I'm going to click this to make sure that the proportions are locked. If I don't click this, it'll get distorted. I'll show you what that looks like. So let's decrease this width to 3 inches. And you can see the banana gets kind of squished and not quite what we want. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. I'm going to select the banana again. I'm going to click this lock button here. And then when I change this to 3 inches, the height changes in order to keep the proportions the way that we want it. Now we have a few options for how to cut this out. Right now this will just go down, it'll convert it to something with very high resolution and put it down as pixels. That's called rasterizing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple options for how to cut this out, and I will actually leave all of them on there so you can see what all of those cuts look like. So the easiest option obviously is to take just like a rectangle. So I'm going to click the rectangle tool here on the left and just drag a box around our banana and make sure that it's maybe 4 inches at its biggest dimension. So now we have a nice little border around this. What we need to do is go to Object Properties. If it's not open here on the right, you can go to Object and open Object Properties here in this menu. We're going to change the outline in the outline part with the little pen. We're going to change this outline to hairline, and we're going to change the color, which is the second tool, to 255 red, 0 green, and 0 blue, and then click away, and you can see this is now a red box. If we want to change these corners to not be sharp corners, which can make it a little easier to remove it from the material once we've cut it, you can go to the box, or the rectangle properties here in that Object Properties menu, and you can change your corner size and the corner shape. So in this case, I'm just going to round the corners down by clicking this up a little bit until I can see that it's a rounded corner. This will make it a nice little thing. So we'll go with a 1/4 inch corner size. So that's one option for how to cut it out. Now this will put this image down as pixels, and then it will follow this line and cut through the material. So that is the easiest option. Obviously you can use any shape, any whatever you want to use, as long as it has this hairline and red property. It will be read by the printer as a cut line, and it will cut. There's a little more precise way to do this, and I'll show you how to do that real quick. We're going to select our image, and as long as there's no holes in it that have gaps in between the materials, so if you have, say, this gray portion wasn't in here, that would interfere with this. Right now this is what's called a closed object, so it has no openings inside of it. So I'm going to go to Object, I'm going to go to Shaping, and I'm going to go to Boundary. And what that's going to do is add a perfect outline on the outside of our banana. I'm going to change this from 0.5 width on its thickness to hairline, and just like with the other one, we're going to put 255 red. This time I'm actually just going to drag it to the top right corner because it's already set to red, and it's already 0, 0 for green and blue, so this is all set to go. And this will cut a perfect outline around this banana. Now that we have our image set up, I'm going to show you how to set the material as well as set up layout for this machine. So we don't really care where it's placed on here. Just for simplicity, I'm going to select our object and I'm going to move it to the top left corner. That's the most common place to have it. Now you can either click on this print icon here, click File, Print, or you can just hit Control P. That'll open the print dialog. Here we're going to see that the VLS 6.60 printer is selected. That is our laser system here. I'm going to click on Preferences, and that's going to open our materials database. Now this will normally be selected on whatever material the last person to use this machine was. In our case, we're going to be using this piece of wood, so I'm going to use Natural. I'm going to select Wood, and then this is probably a medium thickness, medium hardness wood, so I'm going to check General Medium Woods. I don't know specifically what kind of wood it is, so I'm not going to worry about picking a specific wood. I'm going to pick General Medium, and we're going to make sure all of these are at 0 to start, unless you already know that you're going to need extra power. So we're going to hit apply to ensure that that's saved. Now we're going to measure our material thickness using these calipers. So we're going to open these calipers and ensure that it's at 0. We're going to open them, close them, and if it shows anything other than a perfect 0, we're going to hit the 0 button. We can see that that's a perfect 0 now. We're going to open them just a little, and then we're going to roll this along until we have sort of squeezed our material. This material appears to be just over 0.2 inches thick, so I'm going to put in 0.201 as our material thickness. You don't have to be super specific, you just have to be fairly close. And then after I've entered the material thickness, we're going to hit tab, and that's going to open this apply button again so that we can click on it and save that setting. In this case, I'm familiar with this particular piece of wood, so I'm going to take this vector cutting up to about 15% extra because I know this wood is particularly hard to cut through. There's a manual control button up here. Do not use this unless you already have specific training from a staff member on how to use this. This will allow you to do more specific things. For now, stick to the materials database. It's a pretty comprehensive tool. Once we're done and apply has been checked, we're going to hit OK. We're going to hit apply in the print dialog, and then we're going to hit print. Now, as you can see, nothing's happening. We haven't actually printed anything yet. We've just sent it to the universal control panel, which is the control panel for this laser, and that'll be the next step. Once we've sent our image to the printer using the print dialog, we're going to open the UCP control panel, which is the control panel for setting up the laser itself. You can either click this little red box down here that says, it looks like a little diamond with a little dash through the middle. If this is not here, open this little triangle here to see if it's been moved into a hidden movement area, or you can click on it here in the taskbar and that'll start it up if it's not already on. Once this is open, we're going to click here, and you can see that our image is already sent to the printer. So this is going to show a preview of what's going to happen. Because we see that these lines are red, we know that our cut lines have gone through. If these lines show up as any other color, they will not cut. If they are not hairline or they are not perfectly 25500 red, they will not cut, and they will not show up in this preview as red. So we can zoom in on this just to see. It looks like it's going to have some pixelation. This is just a preview. This is not what the end product will look like. It'll look a little more detailed than this. This is just a quick render, low intensity for the machine itself. So because the machine is not on, none of these options are on. So I'm going to go ahead and click the power button right here. This is going to turn on the laser. You can hear it fire up. It's going to perform a couple of homing moves to make sure that it knows where 0 is. And then once that's ready, we're going to orient our material as well as our image. So for this particular image, we're going to use this piece of wood. It's just a piece of scrap that I found here in the shop. We've already set up our material thickness and our material type, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in the laser. So we're just going to open this once we see that there's nothing else in there. And you can see this bed is pretty filthy in general. Don't worry about it. It's pretty much always going to be this way. If it doesn't look this way, you're not using your laser right. So there's a few ways to set this up. You can place this anywhere on the bed. In this case, I've already set up the image in the top left corner. So I'm going to take this because I know these corners are squared. This is from a larger piece of material. I'm just going to put this square in the top left corner. This is the most commonly used corner, so sometimes this means that the laser will have a little less power here because it will get a little dirtier because it spends the most time here. If you notice that your prints are not working well, try another piece in another area. Generally, I'd say in the center is probably a good place to go, or anywhere on the right-hand side. Anywhere you see the bed is not super dirty. In this case, I'm not super worried about the quality of this print, so I'm going to move this over to the top left corner. Once we've got our material in there, I'm going to double check that on the computer it is set up somewhere that it will actually print. So I'm going to move our image by using this relocate view button, the middle of the 5 buttons here on the screen. And I'm just going to drag this over to the top left corner by grabbing one of these contact points and just dragging. Alternatively, you can click on any of these control points. So let's say I grab the top left control point, and then you can go to the coordinate system here, and I'm going to put this 1/8 of an inch, so 0.125 inches and 0.125 inches, both X and Y, or down I guess, Y. And that'll put it right on the corner. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little nozzle thing. This is called the focus view. This is going to give us a preview of where the actual image is going to be on the material. So I'm going to click on the top left corner of our image, and it's going to move the laser head over to that area. And as you can see, that's pretty well on our material. It's pretty close to the edge, so just to be comfortable, I'm going to move it down a little bit more and over a little bit more as well. So we're going to go back over here to the relocate view, go 0.25, 0.25. Now again, I'm going to click on the top left of the image, and you can see it's moved in a little bit more. Now I'm going to click on the bottom right of the image, so that will show the entire box of the area that it'll be in. And as you can see, that's still on our material, so we shouldn't have any issues. Now that we've set this up, we're ready to print. We're going to close the top. We're going to ensure that both the blower in the back and our ventilation system are on. If this button is pushed in, it is off. If it is out, the machine is on. You'll notice a power button and a connection indicator that shows that it's connected to the computer. Once these are both running, you're ready to start your print.
I actually want to do both name board things right now, just because I have time.
I'm going to give a quick voiceover here. Is that alright? It is very important during operation of the laser that you do not stare directly into the beam or at any of the surfaces that it is etching. The cover to this machine is rated for optical safety. However, this is a very powerful machine, and staring at the laser for an extended period of time can damage your retina. So don't stare at the laser at any point during operation. In particular, when it is cutting, it is as much as 100 times brighter as when it is rastering. So just make it a habit not to look at the laser in general. Cool. Where's your plan?
Okay, so I have to get off.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So I have two of them. Yeah, one I have to get off the laptop, one is on mine.
Once your image is done cutting here on the laser, depending on the material, you're going to have to wait a few minutes up to a half an hour, depending on what you've cut. In this case, because it's just wood, we've waited about 5-10 minutes, and we're going to go ahead and open it up. You can see here that our image is cut. And I'm going to hold it in place. It's cut around the banana that it's created an image of, as well as around the entire area, and it's ready to go. We can pull this out in just a moment, and our product's ready to go.